Fair enough.
But I mean, the dance. I mean, I love this image of the dance. I'll take you outside of Egypt for a bit. The American dance with Turkey has really gone foul, hasn't it? You caught them dancing with somebody else, or they caught you giving them your back. What happened?
It's very sad.
Sad dance.
Sad, divergent state of affairs. Very sad.
And now Mr. Erdogan is the one preaching, and he's lecturing you on what democracy is all about. And I'm really surprised that the US is taking it like a first wife and accepting all the beating that's coming from Mr. Erdogan. How come?
Well, the relationship with Turkey is long and it's historic, and it's...
Since 1952, when you started the Incirlik base, and then NATO.
And there are certain dependencies there. However, how long will the American people take, spit in the face? I'm not sure. This is a political problem as is playing out in our own election. Kind of back to what we were talking about. What is America going to do for Egypt? Well, there's a great deal of fatigue in America over international engagement. And international engagement on our part can be criticized. I take that. However, people whisper to me, you're the superpower, you must help, and then turn around in public, use the animus or hatred toward us for their own political benefit. No more. See, I have a job to do at home as well, to tell my people why we spend their money on people very far away.
Absolutely.
And what I explain is it's three reasons. First of all, it's very hard for Americans to sit idly by while other people suffer and die. It's not part of our values, it's not who we are. Secondly, we do benefit when we exchange with you and with others, economically and culturally. And third is, even if you don't accept the first two, all of this is critical to international stability and ultimately our own national security. Now, the deeper question, though, is again the architecture of where we're going in the 21st century as humanity. We're going to build out sustainable economic and political systems that are based upon human dignity and where power is held accountable and people have a chance to have their lives flourish in a sustainable type of economic model, or not.
Doesn't look likely.
Well, but I think we hold out that vision of what ought to be so that it becomes the new standard.
So I use your term of Turkey spitting in the face of the administration. How about Iran? I mean, what happened? I mean, all of a sudden, things are working. You have some guarantees that they're not going to build a nuclear bomb. But because of that, you're taking the beating again as a first wife who has to accept what the Iranians are doing. You pay ransoms, your Navy people get caught and humiliated, and you're giving the impression that this is the way you should be treated, like what the Iranians are doing and what the Turks are doing. While if the Egyptians are doing it the other way around, or the Saudis, you just don't get the right treatment. Why is that?
I would say this regarding the Iran question. The ill treatment of our sailors has more lasting impact than this murky transaction that took place. The administration is claiming that, no, this wasn't some hostage buy. It was, we owed this, we were going to give it anyway, we might as well use it to get people out. Okay, that's the explanation. It's not coming from me, it's coming from others. But leave that aside. The humiliation of Navy personnel should never happen. That has a long-term political impact, perhaps more so than the other question, because it shows deep disrespect. We're just like anybody else. We don't want to be disrespected. Now, I did not...
We don't want you to be disrespected.
Yeah, I did not, in all candor and all forthrightness, I did not vote for the Iran nuclear deal. Now, I also, though, was in a little bit different position in that I refused to be dismissive of the attempt to find some type of deal. However, the lifting of ballistic missile technology and other weapon systems agreements was, I thought that was inappropriate, and now we see what's happened. So I didn't support that. Again, back to the question, you have to help answer this. What is the Middle East going to look like in 30 years? What role does Egypt play? Will it turn inward and be insular and continue to deal with all of the carryover stagnation from decades past? Or will it revive itself through a hard self-analysis that the president has called for, and then in turn be repositioned to build that trust with external partners so that reinvestment can take place? I think that's your challenge.
Don't you think that the challenge of the 21st century and the years to come, the remaining years of the 21st century, will be dealing with terrorism, dealing with fanaticism, much more than it was in the last 20 years of the 20th century? And we could see that this is heading where it reached lands that it had never reached. I mean, we see it in Europe now extensively happening. We've seen it before in the US. We don't want to see it again in the US. We don't want to see it again in Europe. We don't want to see it at home. But looks like the world is sitting idle and sometimes encouraging that more of these would happen, sometimes under the pretext of human rights, sometimes under the pretext of moderate opposition in Syria, and all the time we're just opening doors for armed men to penetrate our societies in Nebraska or in my hometown, Alexandria in Egypt, or somewhere in a small village in Germany or in France or in Nice or whatever it is. Why is this happening?
Well, I think to potentially allow someone in your country who's going to do your harm is absolutely outrageous. And there is an internal debate going on in the United States as to what our immigration policy is going to be and how people who want to come to the United States are going to be appropriately vetted. We have a long history of immigration. But if your values tell you that you can kill another person in the name of your religion, you're not welcome. In fact, do not come there, or I assume here. That's your values as well. In fact, that's no religion at all. That's a death cult.
Certainly.
So this is one of the greatest challenges. Can I go a little deeper on your question? Because I think we can make it simple and put it in 3 terms. The challenges are security, economic, and what I call family. And I want to get to the third one quickly. Regarding security, I think there are 2 challenges. One, you just stated very well. This concept, this asymmetric warfare. Warfare used to be against them over there behind a particular line with a different color uniform. Not so much anymore. The world is quickly adjusting to that, particularly after 9/11. However, the United States, particularly after World War II, had this superpower status cast upon us. And there was great sacrifice offered by America, both in terms of economics as well as the lost lives, to combat ideologies, not always perfectly, but combat ideologies around the world so that other people could enjoy the liberties we have and we could remain safe. The United States cannot carry this burden alone, nor should we carry the burden alone anymore.
No one should.
We have to have responsible partners joining us in the name of creating the conditions for international stability. The second issue in this regards is the possibility of nuclear proliferation worldwide. The containment of the technology gets harder and harder, particularly as nuclear power spreads. This is an existential problem for humanity. And look at just the reactor gone bad due to an unpredictable tsunami in Japan with the world's greatest, best, smartest engineers. And there is confusion as to how to handle this. This is very dangerous. Regarding economic security, it's back to that point I just made. What does a sustainable economy look like? Where everyone is given the chance and opportunity, has the conditions in which the society is stable enough where they can pursue their ideas, their dreams, and actually power structures are committed to the individual's person's dream, pursuit. The third is related to that, what I call family security.
When I was doing the introduction in Arabic about you, I said that you are the person who's upholding the family values as the source of creating a very powerful or a great United States of America.
Or a great Egypt. The strength of the nation depends upon the strength of family and community. And from there, the communities that are built out around this idea that we live in an ecosystem. We are interdependent upon one another. I take responsibility for myself if I've been given the gift of bringing life into the world with my spouse. I have a responsibility to those children to bring them up as best they can, and then a responsibility to my neighbor, who I then can hold accountable when they may be going beyond the lines as to what is just and good for themselves. That's the proper order of things. That will bring about human flourishing and human happiness. We're chasing all kinds of other things in the material world to make us happy, but that's the core value, where people feel nested and protected and loved. That's the strength of a nation.
Who are you voting for?
Well, I was hopeful that we wouldn't get into the dynamics of the presidential election in America here, because I'm on international TV and you're home. I'm not asking you who you're going to vote for in the next election.
In the Egyptian election?
Right.
Oh, I can tell you.
Here's what I'll say about that. I'm a Republican, and so I am obviously inclined that way. People observing the election, though, need to understand something. Not only 9% of Americans have voted for either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton thus far. 9%.
So that leaves 91% reluctance or not knowing.
Feeling that this or that candidate has this or that inadequacy on both sides of the aisle. And so that's why this narrative has been so volatile. It's not clear, it's not played out quite yet. It will continue to be volatile.
Do you think the coming president of the United States, whoever it is going to change the face of America or the face of the world in that case? Is it that radical?
I think America has a first order responsibility to ourselves, so that our own internal dynamics remain strong, so that we can be in partnership with Egypt and other countries who we consider to be friends and allies based upon the values proposition. You can't overextend yourself while your internal systems are weak. We have some internal weaknesses economically. For instance, one of the things that Donald Trump has done quite successfully is tap into this deep, deep resentment, this deep anxiety, this anger that exists in American society among many people who feel like they've been left out of the economic and political and cultural settlement. In fact, that's the basis, even though he won't articulate it like that, that's the basis of his campaign. On the other side, you have Hillary Clinton pulling forward a more traditional model of governance, and this is clashing. And so the outcome of that is not clear. I wish they would listen to me. I think I try to be clear.
You should have been running for president. But I mean, the current administration is leaving the coming administration in a very hard position in so many issues.
Particularly internationally, and internally back home.
Internally, I mean, the Obamacare...
I actually proposed something to my own constituents. I write a weekly email to my constituents, as best we can, on various policy issues. And a little while back, I proposed some changes in the nature of governance. One of which was to go to a one-term presidency, 1 6-year term, rather than 2 4-year terms. Because if you go back historically and you look at it, President Obama swept into office. Now, he's on the other side of political aisle than me, so that should give you indication of where I stand. But he had a broad and deep appeal to people looking for change, looking for something new. But look at the second term, more difficulty, more turmoil. President Bush, again, having had 9/11 cast upon him, changing the whole nature of his presidency, and then the second term, of course, getting more and more difficult. The same thing happened to President Clinton, President Reagan.
So it's always the second term.
The second term is very tumultuous and difficult. So I proposed the change to our Constitution. You get 1 term. That way you don't have to worry about running for re-election. You're not spending an inordinate amount of time running around the country politicking for years. You're attending to the affairs of the nation.
But I mean, if you make a wrong choice, you'll be stuck with the president for 6 years instead of 4.
That's correct, but look how often we don't change the president after 4. So that's another consideration. People seem to like that idea generally. I proposed a sort of a term, but they said, why didn't you propose the same term limit for Congress? They shot right back at me.
Would you?
Well, one of the reasons that I didn't is that we run every 2 years. We have a much more proximate relationship to the people, and that's been designed purposefully to be held accountable. It would be less painful to have to run more often, maybe with even a shorter amount of time, or less often even with a shorter amount of time. But as my wife said, it's good that you're accountable to the people. You should interview my wife. I mean,
Is she around?
she's not here.
She's not. Next time, I mean, you should bring in the whole family. You believe in the power of family, don't you?
Well, I have been graced, blessed with 5 beautiful daughters.
Wow.
One of my Egyptian friends last night said, any man who has 3 daughters goes straight to heaven. So I said, I have 5.
So you go twice. You go for 2 terms. You got 5 daughters and a wife.
Right, and so we have a lot of fun in our house. It's not without normal family issues, but I'm extraordinarily proud and feel so gifted to have these beautiful children and a very considerate wife who empowers me to do things like this by her generosity and sacrifice of being back home.
When we hear about somebody with 5 daughters, we all with so many blessings from God, we say, MashaAllah, which is, may God
Thanks
bless
be to
all
God.
that. Yeah.
Wonderful.
All right, just before we go, I mean, you've already met a number of senior officials, including the Minister of Defense, Minister of Finance, yesterday the MPs, and you're meeting still with the President, President Sisi. Quickly, your impressions about your meetings and what do you think, what do you anticipate for your meeting with the President?
Initial impressions, first of all, a deep, deep sense of gratitude that I came, which is very gratifying for me. A very genuine, authentic welcome by the various ministries I've seen. A prioritization of this visit by me, and I'm very happy about that because, again, I feel my early formation by you can lend something to the very questions that you have asked me. How do we refresh this relationship? How do the people on the street know that there are friends of Egypt out there who very much value this relationship? That even in a family that has certain tensions, nonetheless, the term ahlan wa sahlan, which I have heard, means welcome to the family and the valley of prosperity, as I understand it. I love that term, ahlan wa sahlan.
Right. Tomorrow, meeting with the
I'm
President.
very excited to meet with the President. Again, I think the President has made a number of very courageous statements. These are not well publicized, sadly. I think they ought to be. I hope that Egypt, again, regains its position so that these types of statements actually have the impact they ought to be having. And at the same time, there needs to be an internal effort here to showcase what the President is trying to say. Some of the, again, very sacrificial comments that he's making that shatters the paradigms, but is built upon the solid foundation of strong leadership in the sense of pursuing that which is good and that which is just. I hope to have a variety of conversations beyond, again, the normal things we talk about in terms of the proper role our military cooperation is playing, how we strengthen economic ties, but to this greater values proposition, which, again, the President himself has shown willingness to engage in. I think that's important. I hope that, again, my own small contribution affirms his ambitions in this regard.
It certainly does. Congressman Jeff Fortenberry, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. We're looking forward for you to come back with the family, maybe in Christmas or so, come to Sharm el-Sheikh or come to Cairo. We'd be more than happy to tell you, ahlan wa sahlan.
Shukran.
Thank you.